everyone, and we're live. Today, we have a really special guest on the Entrepreneurship Handbook podcast. Today, we have Kevin Indig. Excuse me. I knew I was going to mess that up, even though I practiced before. So apologies about that. Kevin Indig. Kevin, I'll let you kind of give your background here shortly in terms of just a lot of, a growth, a lot of success you had with super successful companies. I'm sure this is something that our audience would really love in terms of how to scale their business, whether they're small or large company. Kevin's seen it all. Just real quick, welcome everyone to the Entrepreneurship podcast. As I mentioned, it's the podcast where we interview entrepreneurs, across the world, seeking inspirational stories with actionable takeaways. So today we're super fortunate enough to have Kevin. Kevin, thank you for being on the pod. I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Absolutely. Kevin and I met at SaaStock in Austin, Texas. I was fortunate enough to see one of Kevin's talks around growth in the SaaS space. So that talk was super amazing. I came up to Kevin to talk to him afterwards, invited him to the pod, and he was very nice enough to join us. So thanks again, Kevin. Before we kind of get into some of those growth tactics and strategies that you mentioned at SaaStock, which I think would be super beneficial for our audience, especially on the SaaS software side, Kevin, can you give us a little bit of a background, kind of tell us your story, where you kind of started, the evolution of your career, and then where you are today?
Sure thing. I'm going to spin it from today back to kind of where I came from. And so what I'm doing today is I'm an advisor to some of the biggest companies in the world, fast growing tech startups usually. Right now working with companies like Dropbox, Reddit, Hims. And before going out on my own, I had the privilege to work in-house at some of these companies. So I'm a former director at Shopify, been a VP at G2, I've been a head of at Atlassian. So my background really is in tech. It's predominantly in e-commerce, SaaS, and marketplaces. And my specialty is SEO, search engine optimization. I've been doing a lot of other things around SEO over the last couple of years, but that's really where I came from. I started my career on the agency side, did a couple of years agency, then went in-house. Now again, I'm out on my own. When I'm not advising clients, I'm writing a newsletter. It's called Growth Memo. Comes out every week. There's a free and a paid version, and it's essentially insights that make people better, give them a competitive edge, help them do their job better around search, but not exclusively tied to search.
Amazing. Yeah. So I've followed your career, a bunch, just being in the SEO space. Can you explain just and this is one thing, we'll circle back to the business side and the growth aspect, but why did SEO become, or how did you go from SEO to this more like growth position? Was it a natural transition between going from SEO, which you still do, but to now a more expansive kind of growth position? What was that transition like?
It's funny you use the word transition because I had a couple of those across along my career. When I was about 22, I decided to join this SEO agency, and God bless my parents because they had no idea what I was doing. They were, unsure, but they kind of supported me. And then I got lucky that SEO grew into this big thing. Back when I started, it was hacky. It was not mainstream at all. It was a thing that a few small people do and nobody really knew a lot about. And so that was one transition where it turned from this hacky thing to a reliable growth channel for companies. And then over the last couple of years, we had a few more transitions. And so I would say that I grew with the evolution of SEO. It used to be this very, clearly defined thing that SEOs would specifically do. And then I would say, so it's 24 right now. I would say, maybe 2016, probably 2018, it started to turn to something that many teams at companies have to do, or at least think about. Design, content writers, product managers in some cases, engineers for sure. And so I broadened my scope over time. On one hand, out of a forcing function, because that's what you need to do to be successful in SEO in most cases. There are a few exceptions. And on the other hand, because I was curious, I learned a set of principles in SEO that are very applicable to other disciplines as well. and that got me curious about things like product design. And I kind of ventured into that. So at Shopify, for example, just to show that contrast, right? Shopify, I had SEO, content, CRO, and then some growth product functions in the group that I was leading. At Atlassian, for example, I was first of all first specialized in technical SEO and then just SEO. So it was very, very different scope. But you can see at the hand of these companies how that scope broadened over time.
Got it. Yeah, I've grew up in the space of SEO as well, and similar to you, I feel like it was something that, like you said, super hacky. No one knew what I did for a living for a very long time, and I think people still don't know like what SEO is as well. But it allowed me to see this other side of like the businesses, to see just not only how to like build strategy, but like to see their products first, to build content, to be really close to the business owners, to understand like why they build their business, how they build it. And that allowed me to build strategy around the specific product, allowed me to see just kind of the back end of how they actually build the product, not only just building the websites, but like the founder's story. I felt like was always an important part of like every SEO like discovery call. Like we had to get to know them first in order to like really develop a strategy that made sense for them and that really helped them like grow. So I feel like SEO is kind of that perfect career to really understand product, even if it's you're just building a website for that matter. So really cool. Okay, so walk us through just kind of your. Let's go back into the SaaS talk, because I thought it was a really good talk around growth strategies that you've actually implemented for some of the brands that you actually work with. Can you just walk us through the talk at the SaaS talk for some of our SaaS entrepreneurs out there?
Yeah, absolutely, happy to. So here's the situation. When you look at Google as a channel, but also at growth, online growth in general, the landscape looks like this. Paid advertising has become a lot more expensive, right? CPCs have grown, especially since 2020. There are some, keywords you pay $30 for a click or maybe more. On the other hand, people still rely on Google largely for their research, right? Whether that's travel, whether that's consumer goods, whether that's B2B, SaaS, enterprise, where people are on Google, they research, they browse the web. Google has become largely synonymous with the web. And there are ways to be very successful on Google and SEO specifically. We're not talking about paid search, right? We're talking about organic search. But there are also ways to fail miserably. That's kind of the situation. That's kind of the problem set. And so the takeaway that I wanted to bring across is that we have to update our operating system for SEO. And you and I, Michael, we alluded at this just a couple of minutes ago, right? Where we talked about, okay, you broaden your scope over time. Like, why did you do that? And part of that is because you have to be successful in SEO. And it brings me to this distillation of insights that you can express in 5 different statements. One of those statements is tools over text. The second one is scaling qualitative research. The third one is data journalism. The fourth one is programmatic SEO. And the fifth one is product-led SEO. And so the idea of these 5 statements is that if you kind of follow these almost principles, that's kind of your recipe for success in organic search. And we can dive deeper into each one of them. Should we?
Yeah, let's do that. But before we do, do these principles kind of this operating system, does it apply to companies like startups or companies in growth or like enterprise? Where does this kind of fit for these operating systems?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I would say where it doesn't fit is in small local businesses. They just play by a different set of rules, right? So if you're mom and pop shop, or if you're a store, you're playing Google local. That's a very different playing field. These principles that I'm talking about, they apply to fast growing startups, to enterprise companies, and to everything kind of across every vertical, right? Whether it's an app, it's a consumer app like Spotify, or it's an enterprise company like Salesforce, or a marketplace like Etsy, right? These are the types of companies that we're talking about. They don't have to be as big, but business model wise, that's where they have to be anchored.
Got it. Yeah,
Cool.
let's jump right into them.
Yeah, let's do it. So tools over text, what does that mean? It means that today, the most common way to drive organic traffic and customers from organic traffic is often the blog. There's a few exceptions, right? There's some companies, and we're going to talk about them in product-led SEO. There's some companies that can use the product to drive growth. Most companies, however, have to create their own content, their own blog articles, landing pages, etc., to drive organic traffic. And the situation that we're in today is that we have two components that allow us to create superior user experiences that are better than text. And those are typically tools. And the two components are, one, the no-code movement. There are lots of tools that allow you to, sometimes it's plug and play, turnkey, drag and drop. But there are many tools that allow you to build simple user interfaces with basic logic behind them. The other component is AI, right? Together with AI and no code, we can create little products. And these little products can live on our websites, and they can answer questions or help people solve problems much, much better than text. I'll give you an example. I worked for a year with the fastest growing fintech startup called Ramp. And at Ramp, very early on, when we started growth, we built a mission statement generator. We built this mission statement generator with ChatGPT 3, very scrappy, half a day, that essentially is a landing page where users come to. They can punch in a couple of different parameters like their company, business model, etc., and they get a list of mission statements that they can use. And we were surprised by how much new customers that drove had a significant, a decent impact on the business, not company changing, right? But it had more impact than we expected for such a quickly built tool. And so that's really what I'm talking about is what are the ways where you can build a little widget or a calculator or a tool to better help people solve their problems instead of writing about that problem and teach them how to solve that problem. And that's something that we have available to us these days. And that's, again, part of the no-code movement in AI.
Question on that. Yeah. How did you guys decide on which tool to actually build for the company? Was that just based on like survey data or just kind of like consumer insights, or was it just kind of based on research? Like where did you guys make the decision to like invest in a tool such as the mission statement generator?
I love that question because it's not super straightforward. At the end of the day, we did a couple of things. One is just keyword research. We just looked at what are some keywords in the space that people are looking for very broadly. Two, we thought about how can we address more companies early on in their foundation, right, when they're being formed. And when people start thinking about a mission statement generator or mission statement in general, that's usually they're very early on. Fun fact, that same thing worked really well at Shopify too, where we had a whole suite of different tools, like a business name generator, and that had significant impact on the business that is Shopify. And it's because people look for a name when they start a company, right? And we wanted to be present at that exact moment. And then lastly, the third thing is we just, launched a lot of ideas very quickly. And I really have to give a hat tip to Ramp for that. They executed very well, very fast, very scrappy. And so we just cycled through lots of different ideas that we had instead of spending a lot of time shaping the perfect idea. And the mission statement generator was one of these ideas that worked really well.
Very cool. Yeah, that's super interesting because like some companies are, a little gun shy on pulling the trigger on some of these ideas. Other ones like to, scale and grow really quickly, just put out a bunch, see what sticks. What's kind of a good operating system in that ecosystem where it's like, what's a healthy balance, right? You want to be able to try and experiment with new things, but also you want to be cautious because resources are super limited within an organization.
Such a good point, Michael, because this is critical, right? Mm-hmm. Generally, speed trumps accuracy. You can iterate your way to the ideal outcome. And the best companies that I worked with, they all do that. They all ship incredibly fast, not aimlessly, right? They still try to be as accurate as possible, but they might sacrifice 30% accuracy for faster output and throughput. And that works really well, again, because you just get more, you find this principle everywhere. Whether it's in fitness, you get in more reps, or whether it's in another space where you get more transactions, just get more experience by shipping faster. Now, obviously, there is a risk to it, right? And so typically, the faster and more established companies become, the less quickly they act. In my personal experience, to a fault, I very rarely find more value or faster returns by being more accurate than faster. The only guardrails you obviously have to set is around any kind of security hazards or exposure or anything that might damage the brand. Obviously, you cannot afford that. But apart from that, that this is a common pattern in my work as an advisor. I often pull large companies back into that fast-paced shipping environment so that they get more exposure, because they tend to get complacent over time, and then they tend to just sit there and plan for a whole quarter and ship nothing. And that's just not the recipe to endure in the market. You'll often face a newcomer who'll then just outpace you, and you have no chance. So anyway, long story short, speed matters greatly, and it is typically under invested and not valued enough.
Got it. I love that. Iterate yourself to an outcome. I really like that. But obviously do it accurately, and obviously making this calculated risk as well. So that's the first principle, right? It's text to tools, or yeah.
Yes, text to tools or tools over text, same
Tools
thing.
over text. Mm-hmm.
Yes. The second one is scaling qualitative research. I might need to find a better word for that or a better name for that. But here's the whole idea, right? So over the last, I would say, 10, maybe 15 years, this idea of performance marketing, of running ads on Google, YouTube, Facebook properties or Meta properties, etc., has become incredibly popular and incredibly effective as well. It just works, right? So it's a channel that you can use to scale. It comes with downsides, right? But generally, companies invest in it for a good reason. But that also means that our idea of marketing or growth has become very quantitative, very quant, right? It's like a hedge fund, lots of numbers. And now with AI, we're facing an opportunity to bring back a bit more qualitative insights into our decision making. So for example, in SEO, it's very common to look at a range of keywords, look at their search volume, which is how many people a month search for that term, and then prioritize mostly by that search volume. Now, search volume is incredibly valuable. Like it's a flawed metric in some ways, but it's also very, very valuable in other ways. It's the best metric that we have to quantify market demand, right? That didn't exist in the past. You had to run surveys and observe people and whatnot. And these days we can measure demand online. But again, there's some challenges connected with that. And with AI, we can now also leverage qualitative insights, for example, by using transcripts between representatives of a company and consumers to fish for insights, right? So these transcripts often come up when there are sales calls or customer success or customer support. And now with AI, we can aggregate all of these transcripts and we can parse them, right? There are tools where you can upload transcripts, say from Gong or Chorus, which is a commonly used tool by sales teams to monitor and record their conversations, and we can use those transcripts to then ask customers questions, not directly, but based on that conversation, like what issues did they bring up, what competitors did they bring up, what they're struggling with, why are they evaluating our solution, and that brings or surfaces incredible insights where you don't have to survey customers or talk to them from a marketing perspective, but you leverage the existing conversations that are happening between customer and company to sharpen your qualitative understanding of different things across product, marketing, and of course, SEO.
Got it. Yeah. So you gave an example of, just like the sales the platform, the sales AI platform. So, company would be able to kind of gain some insights there. Yeah, can you give me like one more example, just so I kind of wrap my mind around just kind of this take? So it'd be more, would it be more customer like insights or survey data, just kind of first party, information or data that a company has access to that no other company basically has access to because they own it?
Pretty much, yes. So here's an example of what I did with a client. Can't name the client, unfortunately, but I can describe what we did. So we went out. We got about 100 transcripts from conversations between the sales reps and prospects that eventually turned into customers. We took these 100 transcripts, we exported them as PDFs from Chorus, and we uploaded them to a tool called Humata AI. And in Humata, you can upload, again, large amount of PDFs or other types of documents, and then you can ask questions. And Humata will answer your question based on anything that occurs in these documents, right? So we ask something like, what does a customer care about in the context of our product? And then we got a couple of citations from the transcript of customer conversations with sales reps where customers or prospects, better said, mention things that they care about, features, for example, or attributes of the product or pricing. And so we took that and we turned that into blog content, or we used it for our landing pages, anonymously, of course, right? We didn't cite customers, but we knew that this is something that they care about. And that increased our conversion rate significantly. It increased organic traffic. But most of all, these were profoundly valuable insights for product marketing as well, to better position the product, to use in advertising campaigns. So again, it's just a voice of the customer that you hear from a different perspective, and you can now collect at scale simply because AI allows you to basically search all these conversations like a search engine almost.
Love that. Yeah, there was a company I worked at before, and they were in the education space for law students, and they basically had a ton of data and information and surveys. And the question was like, I mean, this is like literally before AI just blew up the world. And they were just like, how do we collect that data and use it in ways that benefit product features, new product development, social content, SEO content, like resource-based content. And it was really difficult because before AI, it was just like we kind of had to sift through the data and try to figure out just what insights we could garner from just looking at it and just plucking out keywords and maybe writing a script that'll figure out patterns or so, or themes. But it was still really difficult. So you're saying like with what you guys did in the strategy was dump all of that into basically a database and have AI just kind of glean out certain themes and those patterns just pretty instantly, which I think is amazing. And to your point, it's no longer in a sense where you're guessing around what your customers are actually wanting. So you're recycling that information on ads, social, SEO, whatever. So I think that's super insightful. That's really powerful.
That's correct. Yes, that's what we did. And the one little aspect that I'm going to highlight that's super important is we use transcripts from prospects. So they were not yet customers, but we use specifically transcripts from prospects that eventually did turn into customers. Because you can also use transcripts from prospects that don't turn into customers, and there could be reasons that prevent them from being customers, which means they're not qualified. They're not well qualified as a customer. And if you use insights from them, you might mislead yourself, if that makes sense, right? So you want to bake in that the conversation you look at is from someone who eventually turned into a customer. Now, look, you might still learn something from people who don't become customers. Not what I'm saying, but you just want to be careful about that. It's a tripwire.
Got it. Super helpful. All right, let's go. Number 3. I'm ready for it.
Number 3. So number 3 is all about this idea of data journalism. And data journalism is essentially leveraging first-party data to create content. So here's what I mean by that. A lot of companies, they either have a product that gathers data. Say you're a company like I'm just going to take an example of a company that I worked at, G2, for example. G2 is a software marketplace where people review software products and then also finds, obviously, information if they are evaluating a software product. And so the core of G2's product is user reviews, and you can learn a lot about these user reviews, and out of that you can build, for example, industry reports or research insights, which G2 does. That creates for a very rich body of insights that is also very attractive to newspapers, publishers, anybody out there. And in SEO, it's important to get backlinks. Some of your listeners probably know this, but this idea of being referenced from other sites, obviously very critical for just SEO. But even in general, it's important for your brand to be out there, right? Brand loyalty, brand recall is incredibly important. People buy more from brands that they trust and know, and at the same time, having like brand damage or having a bad brand, ask Boeing, for example, right now can be really bad for the business. So anyway, brand's super important. Being mentioned out on the web is a way to strengthen or build your brand, and a way to get more mentions out on the web and get more attention in general is by publishing these data journalism pieces or data stories, which are essentially first-party research paired with a really good story and good visualization. So a couple of companies that do this really well. One of them is called ZipRecruiter. Probably heard them at least from the podcast ads. I think they ran ads on almost every podcast for a while. And they put out all this data about the jobs market and applicants and which industries are hiring and not hiring, and like what to do to be successful left and right. Another one is LendingTree. They are a consumer company in the finance space, so they will compare credit cards and mortgages and loans, and they put out a lot of data about these topics as well, right? Like how has credit card debt changed over time, et cetera, et cetera. And so those two are best practices for exactly what I'm describing, right? They have data that nobody else has, or insights that nobody else has, which is incredibly valuable, again, to shape your brand, to be cited by other sites. And they package that in a way that it's easy to cite, easy to consume, and easy to understand. They have graphs, for example, that are interactive. They describe things in a very easy way. They don't use fancy or complicated words, right? They don't read like research studies. They read more like papers or almost like newspaper articles, and that's a big piece of, again, like being successful in not just SEO but also creating more company awareness in general.
Got it. So it's from the talk, or from what you're saying now, is like it could be data that a company possesses, obviously internally, or it could be just, I think you mentioned as well, maybe when you're talking, I'm trying to like recall this from SaaStock, but like publicly available data sets as well that's industry specific to recruiting, jobs, or whatever that may be. Would that fall into this category too, like public data sets as well, like information that's accessible via like API pool or something like that?
It absolutely can. The question is a bit about, if this data set is publicly available, what is my value add? What can I offer to make this better than what anybody else could already get from the data? Sometimes it's just cross-referencing with different data sets, right? Sometimes it's just here is some jobs data cross-referenced with some financial data or credit card debt data, and it just helps you get a new insight from combining two data streams. And then other times it's combining with your own proprietary data, right? Like, hey, we're Uber, and we hire a significant amount of part-time workers or gig workers, and we can say something about the economy of a city, based on our data. Like, I'm obviously making something up here, as you can tell, but that's the idea. You can use public data, and you can also use your own research, like polls, surveys, focus groups. There are services that allow you to survey, a couple thousand people very quickly, within a couple of days, and you get that data back. Opinio is one of these services. Just to mention one and give your audience a direction. But whatever it is, it has to add value. It has to be not, it has to make sense, be easily digestible, and something that people wouldn't easily get anywhere else.
Got it. Okay. And you mentioned too, just like it has to be, there's some visual representation or some graphs. And that's probably important just because, I mean, one, it's easier to digest the data and information. People love visuals. I feel like as an SEO, people love to link to visuals or things that are visually represented or easy to understand that they could share on social media, and it makes them look like a subject matter expert or something that they discovered want to share with other folks.
Exactly.
How important are the visuals to that?
Visuals are important in general, and also for data journalism. A really well-designed graph just goes such a long way in helping people understand, but also in catching their attention. So that it is part art, and you don't want to be sloppy there. Ideally, you have a designer or a freelancer who can help you create really good charts, and you can look at how BCG or McKinsey structure their slides to get an understanding of what a good chart often looks like. I'm telling you, it takes a lot of work, and it's not as obvious as you think it is. But again, the work really pays off.
Got it. Well said. Okay, so data journalism. What's number 4?
Number 4 is programmatic SEO. And so what programmatic SEO essentially means is that you will find these SEO opportunities sometimes where you have a keyword that permutates across many different dimensions. So let me give an example. With one client, this client is an applicant tracking system. We build thousands of pages about job descriptions for different types of jobs, right? Like hourly wage jobs, like a cashier or a bartender or whatever. And so with a bit of research, you come across these opportunities where you can use the same format and style of a page to address a similar intention or intent across many different types of keywords, right? So we create job pages for barista job descriptions, cashier job description, all these kind of things, all these permutations, and we provided the visitors different templates of job descriptions that they can use if they're hiring for that type of role. That's an example of a programmatic SEO play. And what's so interesting about that right now is that, again, we can use AI to create most or a big part of the content. AI created content often has a bad rep because it's often done very poorly in a very lazy way. But if you do it well, it absolutely provides value and can work. With something like a job descriptions are, they don't need a lot of creativity. Actually, too much creativity can actually be bad in this case. But they're often also very well defined, right? Like there's a lot of information out on the web about what a barista has to do or what a cashier has to do and what they need to be good at. This is not a green field where the AI makes something up. Again, there ways to go wrong about this and do it in a lazy way. But just to not get too technical right now, you can use AI to create a lot of programmatic SEO content. You want to use humans to review that content, and you want to, not just blindly publish it. But the opportunity here is that AI can produce a lot of well-defined content for you to create a lot of pages, which then go out to drive more organic traffic, which eventually turn into customers.
Got it. And I imagine the lazy strategy would be easy to like replicate. Like if you're and it probably wouldn't go very far with like, Google, if you're just using strictly AI content to build a programmatic like strategy. If it's lazy, then it's probably easy to replicate, and somebody could probably either, improve that process and then probably outrank you or something. How, when you think about the programmatic side, how do you think about like locking in this strategy so that way competitors just can't come and steal exactly what you're doing and do the same thing on their website? And if maybe they have stronger brand, that would mean maybe in Google's eyes that they could probably outrank you if they use a similar strategy. How do you think about that in terms of making your programmatic hard to replicate?
Yes, you want to think about it almost like a house where the foundation is just the core essence of the content, right? And then you can build layers on top with that differentiate your programmatic content from everyone else. Brand is one you mentioned. That is a bit harder to control in many cases. But another one is to just pull in testimonials or statements from customers. The example of job descriptions, for example, it could just be a statement about, challenges that customers have hiring for that particular role or hiring for hourly jobs in general. It can be going back to first party data, right? It can be some of that first party data, which I think is really interesting. And then, of course, rich media. And all of these layers of or levels of your house, they're obviously they become more manual over time, right? So at the very base of the house, you have the programmatic stuff that you can automate, and then as you build the house higher, you venture more into things that take a lot of work, like creating a video, right, or creating an exclusive graphic or stuff like that. So you want to build that house obviously from the ground up, or you just start with the stuff that's easy to automate, and then you layer on top things that are a bit harder to automate. Again, customer statements, testimonials, endorsements, quotes. These are all somewhat scalable. Rich media like images and videos are much, much harder to do. And then there's always, it always makes sense to maybe spend a little bit of time as a human to maybe add a bit more unique or curated content on top of the automated programmatic stuff. And that combined with a strong or reputable brand typically, makes for a pretty good shield. But I'll also say that it's really hard to have perfect protection, right? There's always a scenario where a competitor can come by and kind of take your stuff and improve it or try to add incremental value. And so it takes some monitoring of competitors, and just there's some tools you can use or some alerts that you can define to at least become aware when that's happening. But there's no 100% protection, but there might be 90 or maybe 95 based on how well you execute.
Yeah, programmatic for me is like probably one of the most exciting, growth tactics, or even call it an SEO strategy, what have you. Mainly because it involves a lot of like creativity, and a lot of research, consumer insights. But once you find that thread, you're able to just like scale out a bunch of content based off of what will be useful to either your readers or your customers or potential prospects. But that to me is an exciting part because it requires a lot of like, I think, creativity and not so much just straight, research, but you have to, synthesize that information, create something very interesting. And once you find that thread, boom, it really expands and the content kind of takes a life of its own at scale. So that one's really, that one I'm super fascinated about. And I really appreciate and enjoy.
I will say that there are ways to combine these principles that we're talking about. In the case of programmatic SEO, for example, you can try to figure out if there is a widget that you can build on top of your programmatic content. And that typically is a very powerful combination. An example could be, for job description specifically, you could maybe create a little job description AI creator tool that allows you, which we've actually done with that client, which allows you to punch in a couple of parameters, like the type of role you're hiring for, and then it might spit out a custom job description, and you can embed that tool or widget on all your job description pages. And now you have another layer on top that might actually be a bit more automated, but that really makes your pages defensible, because replicating such a widget takes a lot more time than just scraping and replicating content on a web page.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a great tip. All right. So number 5.
Number 5 is product-led SEO. And so product-led SEO, I want to say up front, it's something that might not be available to every company. It really depends on your business model, your product, and your market. But if you have a path to product-led SEO, it's probably the most powerful force in organic search that you can possibly harvest. And so here's what I mean. In parts, or for some companies, the product is, or at least part of the product is the web experience, right? Is web pages. We spoke about G2, which is a software platform, and you can read reviews online without having to log in, right? Google can crawl and index and rank these reviews or category pages or comparison pages. And so as the product grows, as it finds more adopters and users, it also has a positive impact on SEO because it leads to more reviews, which can then be aggregated into new category pages, which then rank again organic search and then drive more customers. Other examples are Uber, TripAdvisor. Let's see, who else do we have? DoorDash, Instacart, Spotify, YouTube. Right, these are all companies that drive growth with product-led SEO, where you have that unique intersection at which more users also drive more organic search. And so, again, you first need to take a critical look at your product and understand if part of the product is exposable to the web, if it has a web experience. And if it doesn't, then it's typically programmatic SEO you can leverage, right? So these two kind of go hand in hand. But if you have a path to product-led SEO, a lot of your focus is in improving the product experience, right? Layout, design, little features, little insights. At G2, for example, we spent a lot of time building little design features like, little descriptions of the product or the ratings and reviews, or little insights, right? Like users find this product easy to use, or users find the price is fair here, right? These little tiny things that make the product experience better are becoming incredibly important for product-led SEO. And then the other side of the coin is more technical, where you have to run a tight ship regarding what Google can index and what Google cannot index, because a lot of product-led SEO companies struggle with the fact that they have a lot of pages and a lot of content, and not all of that is helpful to Google or to users.
Makes sense. So, in the case where you mentioned like a brand like Uber, can you go through? Yeah, let's walk through that 1 second, just to kind of go through the product-led kind of SEO and how they would implement something like this. Can you give a few examples? Can you retract that, or just kind of give us some examples around the Uber side, how they would use it?
So Uber has a product called Eats, where you can order food, and Uber drivers will pick the food up from restaurants and bring it to you. Now, Uber Eats, it's a large website, and again, Uber Eats or UberEats.com has pages that users can find on Google for different types of food, right? Thai food, Chinese food, Italian food, and they also have pages for different cities and pages for different restaurants. So if I, as a user, Google, whatever regarding ordering food online, they have a high chance of showing up and driving new customers. Uber had a choice to make at some point, right? They could have kept all of that information behind an app and just have a single landing page and drive people to download the app, where they can then find the inventory of restaurants in a certain city, or where they can find where they can look for food and then find restaurants that have that food near them. But Uber decided to make all of that publicly available to Google and to users, so that it would rank in organic search. And that's what I mean by product-led SEO. The product is the discoverability of food options and little insights, which I would call features, like how long does it take for the food to get here? How did other customers rate that food? What were some of their favorite orders from the menu, et cetera, et cetera. These are all little like quality of life improvements that are so important for a product-led SEO. But all of that stuff, or most of that stuff probably, is surfaced on the web and accessible to Google and users, so that would drive more customers on the platform.
Love it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for clarifying that for me. And it's things that are like completely or mostly inherent to the product itself, and are really hard to like duplicate. Because obviously, if you don't have those reviews, if you don't have those pages built of like restaurants, if you don't have a lot of that inherent like features in your product, and it's something you really can't write about, something you really can't replicate. Is that why you think it's like one of the most powerful SEO strategies, or what's your kind of take on like it being one of the most important?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's because it's like an avalanche, right? Where you previously mentioned that, or used that term about product-led SEO, where it takes a life on its own, or it takes a form on its own. And that's the same thing with product-led SEO. As you grow in adoption, as you hit critical mass, post product market fit, you have that powerful flywheel that a few other companies have in the world, where new customers just lead to more adoption, more choices. You can leverage that body of customers to go to restaurants and say, hey, here's where your customers are. So you can build that other side of the market. So there's just a lot of positive secondary effects that come from product-led SEO. But again, it's product dependent. It's not something that's available to every company. And this is where we come full circle, right? This is where and why I broadened my purview over time. It's simply because as an SEO, you come across these cases and you're like, wow, there's this whole thing called product-led SEO that is incredibly powerful. Let me learn a bit more about product management or design. Like, how do we stand these things up? How do we make those choices when we build the product or when we expand the product so that we make sure we have a pathway to growth?
Right. And you mentioned like, this is, really good, or this strategy would be really good, like after, post product market fit. Have you ever worked in a situation where, company was defining product market fit and, they were thinking about ways to, test specific content out there? Would that be something you recommend doing more on the ad side rather than organic strategy? When would the good product-led kind of SEO strategy come into place for during the life of a company?
It's a fantastic question because it's not obvious. I would say just after product market fit is probably still a little too early. What you'll find very often is that when you hit product market fit, you get that influx of inbound customers, often word of mouth, sometimes referral, and you want to ride that wave for a bit before you layer on top product-led SEO. Now, I'm not saying you want to wait until the S-curve tips off, right? You don't want growth to dry off before you look for your next channel to grow on. You want to have that up and ready, but you also don't want to launch too early because you might take away some of that organic regrowth that comes after product market fit, right? So my experience, typically 6 to 24 months after hitting product market fit is a great way to start thinking about product-led SEO if that's an option for you. And what I will also see is that a lot of times companies will explore product-led growth or programmatic SEO sooner, often as a remedy for not having strong product market fit, right? And I will also say that there are some cases of like very enterprisey products where you just don't have those same product market fit dynamics, right? You don't have, because your market is very small and you don't feel that same type of pull. But anyway, I would say 6 to 24 months post like actual product market fit is typically a good time.
No, it makes sense. This operating system, it sounds like just like, obviously it's been tested. This is something you developed over the course of your career. Has anything changed in the market? Specifically around like what happened with the Google leak. For those who don't know, it was someone who claimed to have a bunch of insights to Google's algorithm and posted that online. Has this kind of shifted your way or your thinking in terms of when this Google leak came out and this operating system and how your experience has developed something like this? Has anything changed since the leak has come out?
It's a great point. It has reinforced my stance on these principles in many cases, especially the part about offering a good user experience and making sure that people kind of get all the information they need to make an informed decision. That has become more important since the Google leak. And in other ways, there were some things that I didn't think were true that actually turned out to be true. I think they're mostly more on the technical side. But no, I think the future, especially stuff like text over tools, tools over text, those are all things that I think really has become so much more important since the Google leak, because we understand that Google measures user experience so much more through Chrome data, through other user behavior things. But I think it really goes in that direction, and it kind of also explains why we saw such strong success with some of the tools that we've built in the past. So nothing that changed my beliefs 180. It corrected some beliefs, and it reinforced others, I would say.
Got it. Fair enough. Now, this is super helpful, Kevin. Thank you so much. In terms of just the projects you're working on, tell us a little bit about the your newsletter. I've heard, everyone talks about how much work you put into it. It's, they're really great. They're well researched. Can you tell us a little bit more about the newsletter and just maybe some of the projects you're working on now, if you're looking for a particular set of, companies to work with, in this part of the advisory? Like, tell us just a little bit about those projects you're working on.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned earlier, my time is split between advisory and writing that newsletter. As an advisor, I really come into that problem space that is typically not well defined. I'm not working in the space where companies expect deliverables like, an audit or keyword research or so. I typically work in the space where companies are like, something is not working right. We're not sure what it is. Or we're wondering if we have the right people on the team. Or our growth has stagnated. How can we reignite that? Or we're seeing this powerful competitor. How can we, we're a kind of newcomer on the scene. How can we fend them off? Those are typically the spaces that I help companies with as an advisor. And from a content perspective, the newsletter is really about, insights and research in the SEO space. So things like, how have the new AI overviews or new AI answers that Google launched, how do those impact the traffic you get? How bad are they really for websites? How helpful are they? Or things like, what's important right now in e-commerce SEO that you really need to be aware of? Or what are some of the biggest, best companies doing differently from an SEO perspective than everyone else? So it's these kind of questions that I explore based on data. And the paid newsletter, so a paid newsletter comes out every week, and the paid newsletter comes out twice a month. It's a deep dive into companies or industries where, for example, I will dissect from the outside in what a company does in SEO, and then I'll pair that with statements and insights from people working at the company. So that's the inside out perspective. And I wrap that up into a research report. And then same with industries. I monitor large data sets across the web to understand what matters in verticals like SaaS, travel, e-commerce, and everything else that is out there, to distill that into insights for people working in these spaces. Like, hey, if you're in travel right now, here's a new result that Google shows, and if Google shows that result, your traffic really goes down. It's those kind of insights that people can use to get an edge over their competitors and do their job better.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for all the work you do and for this talk as well. There's a lot of really good insights. I think usually at the end we're like, okay, what takeaways would you give folks? But I think there's 5 really good takeaways that you presented. Really like a whole suite of resources that you have available, free and paid. Kevin, yeah, if you do you want to give any other kind of advice to specifically like early stage like SaaS companies? There's a lot of good stuff obviously for companies all across the space. But particularly for like early stage, what kind of advice would you give to them around thinking about just the idea of SEO, not even like a strategy or stuff, just like their perception of it, when to start it, or how important should it be for them at that stage?
Yeah, great question. The one advice I would give is for early stage startups to look into keywords that are just gaining in popularity. There are tools that will allow you to do that, but it's tempting to just go after the big meaty keywords that have a lot of demands and probably a lot of customers, but they're also at the same time very competitive. So if you're just starting out, you want to look at what are people just starting to search for? What's gaining in popularity? Where can I establish myself early on to avoid a lot of competition and a lot of effort I need to put in to be competitive? So that would be my one advice.
Well said. Well said. And if people want to find you online, where can they find you? What's the best place to reach you?
Yeah, 2 places. One is growth-memo.com. That's my newsletter. The other one is kevin-indig.com. That's my personal site. If you want to find out more about upcoming speaking gigs, advisory workshops, etc.
Amazing. Thank you, Kevin, so much for being on the pod. This is super helpful. Lots of really good takeaways, and I appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
Thank you, too. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.